All right, so welcome everybody to Hyperdocs. So of course in this session we'll talk all about Hyperdocs. To get started here, if you would like the slideshow for today, there's some links and pictures and some good stuff on here. So if you want a copy of the slideshow for yourself, you can get it at the short link you see at the top of my screen here, bit.ly/capital NEO lowercase Hyperdocs. That will get you the slideshow. I'll also put the link in the chat for you here. So just put that in the chat for you if you'd like a copy of the slideshow. If you're here live with us, I'm also recording this session, by the way. If you are here live with us, please go ahead and sign in for me. Just click that sign in button on the very first slide if you pulled up the slideshow for yourself. I'll also put the link in the chat for the sign in page. So again, if you're live with us, go ahead and sign in for me. I'll give you guys a minute to get all signed in. If you're stuck, just let me know. All right. So we will go ahead and get rolling here. As we're going throughout today, feel free to type in the chat or unmute yourself if you have any questions. And we'll go ahead and get started. So welcome everybody. My name is Dan. I'm a technology integration specialist at Neonet. If you have any questions after today as you kind of marinate all this stuff, feel free to shoot me an email. So there's my email on slide number 2, dneeson@neonet.org. And with that said, we'll go ahead and dive in. So here's our to-do list for today. So we'll start by looking at the what and the why of Hyperdocs, what they are and why to use them. Then we'll look at some examples of Google Doc, the Google Doc style of Hyperdocs, as well as the Google Slide style of Hyperdocs. Then we'll basically just break Hyperdocs apart and look at their major components. We'll look at how Hyperdocs can be used along with Google Classroom, and then we'll just wrap it up with some practice time and wrap up. And I'll give you guys a bunch of resources to go find a bunch of pre-made Hyperdocs that you guys can start off with. All right, so let's go ahead and jump in. So first question, of course, is what exactly is a Hyperdoc? Well, here it is. A Hyperdoc is an interactive Google Doc or slide deck that replaces traditional teacher in the front, worksheet on the desk learning, and puts it in the hands of the students. And so what that actually looks like is a little something like this. So here's kind of the whole kind of why of Hyperdocs. So we'll start at the top and we go counterclockwise around. So one is we build out a unit or lesson in advance. Then we have all those components of good lesson design that are in there. So it's going to be engaging. It allows students to explore things, allows them to explain, apply, reflect, share, extend. It can encourage independence if you package it that way. You can create some engaging packaging just so it looks nice and it's fun to use. Number 5, it's a flexible lesson design template. And there's lots of pre-made templates out there, as well as some pre-made completed, ready to go Hyperdocs out there as well. Number 6, the teacher can be freed up to work with small groups. Number 7, integrate a variety of digital medias. Number 8, students can work at their own pace. 9, differentiate and give student choice. And then 10, flip your instruction. So of course, flipped instruction means you kind of flip the role of the classroom versus the role of homework. All right, so let's go into our first example here. So usually a Hyperdoc is packaged as a Google Doc. And so I have an example here for you. And if you're following along on your own slideshow, you can click on the link on slide number 6, or you can just watch the Zoom screen here. And so this is a government class Hyperdoc, so probably like 11th grade US government class would be doing this Hyperdoc. And this is basically the whole thing here. And this is a whole lesson all in one package. And so we'll kind of basically just take a look at this whole activity here. So this first kind of section here, this engage section, has 3 boxes underneath it. So one is read this quote from Madison and respond to the question. So then it has this quote from James Madison, and then it has a little question here. So what do you think he meant by that quote? Then the students continue on. They do this explore section, and it has the instructions, and then it has some different type of activity, and then some sort of assessment or question at the end. Then we have the explain section. So view the linked presentation and take notes. And so it has a link to a presentation. And then again, students are asked to include any important information they learned from the presentation. And then at the end here, we have this apply section where students complete a Google form, and then they're going to end up in the class with a whole class Kahoot activity. So this is a very simple example of a Hyperdoc. And basically the whole idea is it's an interactive worksheet that's basically packages the whole lesson in one place. And as we can tell, this is just built right into Google Docs. And so if we pause here and think about how the teacher made this one, the teacher named Laura Moore made this. But the way that they made it, she just made a table and just labeled each section with different instructions or different questions or whatever, and basically then just handed it out to the student. That's pretty much what a Hyperdoc is. And there's some links over to other resources like a video or a presentation for them to watch, or a Google form quiz to do, those different things. All right. And just like that, that's a very simple, kind of streamlined example of a Google Doc Hyperdoc. Next up, we have a slide deck type of Hyperdoc. When we're talking about the slide deck, what we are referring to is this deck of slides when you are putting together a PowerPoint or a Google slide. All this deck or stack of slides that we have running down the left-hand side, that's what they refer to as the deck, or those individual slides. Okay, and so just like we saw over in that Docs example, you can put stuff into a Google slide, of course. And so here on slide number 7, here's of course another example for us to kind of check out. And in this one is like a lesson about digital citizenship. And this one's kind of set up in a similar way. The person that made this one kind of resized the slides, but the idea is still the same. We'll zoom in a little bit here. And there we go. So we have our kind of an introduction where there's like a little video to watch. And then there is a little question and a spot to put your answers. And the kind of same thing for each slide. All right, so there's different activities. Sometimes there's a video. Sometimes there is like a little picture or a diagram that students are supposed to look at. So like this one here has this example of, let's pull it up here, thinking about different things to do when you're going on social media, that sort of stuff. And then students would just fill out, the main message or some key facts about these different parts of being a good digital citizen. All right. And the nice thing about putting this into a Google slide here is it's easy to put in videos. It's nice and easy to give kids a nice designated spot to tell them where they're supposed to put their answer, that sort of thing. And of course, we can have videos in here, and we can have all this cool stuff in hyperlinks. And of course, we'll talk about how to make all this stuff in just a little bit. So those are just a couple examples real quick. Like I mentioned, the big thing about whether you're going to decide to build your Google Doc either in build your Hyperdoc in either a Google slide or a Google Doc. The big difference is if you plan on including a lot of pictures or particularly videos, it will probably be easier to build them in Google Slides. Okay. So here is our major components of a good Hyperdoc. So first thing is we want to have a pretty good amount of multimedia in there. So putting in pictures, putting in videos, putting in audio clips. Then you'll want, of course, want to have some hyperlinks. That's the hyper part of Hyperdocs, right? So hyperlinks to other helpful websites for students to see. Maybe hyperlink over to a diagram for them to go look at, or maybe an article to read, or maybe a video to watch. Then, of course, places for students to respond to whatever prompts that you throw at them. It's good to have some nice, clear organization. You can put in tables like we saw on the Google Doc example, or maybe just have separate slides like we saw over in the slideshow example. And you never want to clutter too much in one small area, so you can spread stuff out. Of course, when you're doing a Hyperdoc, you're not printing these things out at all. These are completely digital assignments. Then, of course, you'll have questions and activities that stretch across blooms. Going back to the, real quick to the Google Doc example, this government example, this one does a really good job of stretching across blooms. So, of course, as this loads up for me again here, it kind of starts off kids kind of slowly of just analyzing just a little quote, and then it builds up to a kind of a bigger activity as you go throughout the assignment. Kind of same idea as we saw over in the Google slide example as well, where you can start off with a small, easier activity, something simple, and you can build up and have multiple activities kind of build up and go across, build up across blooms. Sometimes the Hyperdoc will ask you to watch a video like we saw earlier. So sometimes you'll have a video embedded right onto sometimes you'll have a video embedded right onto a slideshow like this. And so, of course, that's a really good option because you won't have to worry about, kids going over to YouTube and then getting distracted by a different video or having to watch an ad or anything beforehand. So, of course, you can put in a video right into your slideshow. And if you plan on doing this like this in class, make sure your kids have headphones or earbuds ready. Or if if everybody's doing it at the same time, you can show the video beforehand together all at one time. That was a funny little video. And you can kind of plan this stuff out ahead of time. So again, if you're going to have a video, if everybody's doing it the Hyperdoc all at the same time, maybe show the video first before releasing everybody to do the assignment. Or if you have a class set of headphones or people have their own headphones, you can do that obviously. Sometimes the Hyperdoc will ask you to click and read. So sometimes you'll have like a picture that links over to something else. Sometimes you'll have a link that goes over to a different web page. Again, it could be an article. It could be pretty much whatever. And the big thing to do is make it nice and clear that students are supposed to click on that hyperlink. Good idea is to keep it like underlined or even make it a different color than the rest of the text in the line. That way it's nice and clear what kids are supposed to be clicking on and doing. Make it nice and obvious. Even if you style up everything else and kind of change the colors and the fonts and all that stuff, you can still make the hyperlinks into whatever color or underlined or whatever that you want, but still just make it stand out so it's nice and easy for kids to know, oh, I'm supposed to click on this thing to go read this article or to go watch this video or whatever it is. All right. Now, the big thing with Hyperdocs is there's always going to be some sort of interactive component. Sometimes maybe you'll post over to like a Padlet activity where students will kind of all, collaborate, and maybe if we do like a KWL of the parts of a cell and when everybody kind of has a stuff, they talk about stuff that they learned and they all kind of collaborate and talk about that sort of stuff in a Padlet. Or maybe sometimes you'll respond on a whole class Google Doc where everybody just kind of collaborates all on one Google Doc and we can see what everybody said. We'll talk more about that in just a second too. Maybe sometimes you'll respond directly on the Hyperdoc itself, like we saw on the Google Doc example and the Google Slide example as well. If you leave a spot for students to leave their answers, we'll talk more about that, but leave a nice clear spot for where they're supposed to put their answers. They can just answer right on the Google Doc and right on the Hyperdoc and turn that in. And maybe sometimes you'll respond on a whole different tool, maybe like a Google form. That was also an example that we saw on that government Hyperdoc a minute ago. There was a little summative quiz at the end. So the whole thing about when you're going to do a whole class Google Doc, there's just a couple things to consider. So if you want students to be able to see each other's responses, of course, just a shared single Google Doc is a really easy way to do that. So rather than waiting for each person to raise their hand and be called on, why not just post our responses to a shared Google Doc? So that makes it easier to share if you're feeling shy, or your kid's best. You have those quiet kids, you have those loud kids. It kind of depends, right? Some kids worry like, oh, I'm not sure if I'm right or not, so they'll feel better about typing it out rather than saying it verbally. And then, of course, by reading your classmates' responses, you can verify that what you're thinking aligned to others, or you might kind of think about something that you didn't think of in the first place. All right. And so I actually have an example for us here. There's a couple of things to kind of note before doing a whole class Google Doc. There's a couple of ground rules to set. First is, this is just kind of something you say at the beginning here: no deleting or editing anyone else's writing but your own. If you accidentally delete or something, or hit backspace and you actually deleted more than you meant to, whatever, just teach kids how to use the undo button. It's one button. Anybody can do that. Number 3, leave font sizes and colors and formatting. Leave all that stuff alone, unless you have like specific permission from the teacher to change those things. Participate with on-task comments and be professional. As we'll see in just a little bit, we'll be able to tell who said what using revision history. Then number 5, if you can't see something nice, log out. So now we'll actually do this together here. We'll do a little kind of practice run here. If you're following along on the slideshow on your own end, you can click on this little purple doc, and that'll take you over to this activity. I'll put the link in the chat as well for us here. And once you get over to this Google Doc, just answer in each column here. So answer one thing in the blue column and once in the yellow column here. So in the blue column, it says, what are your questions about Hyperdocs? Type in the boxes below. And then in the yellow box, copy and paste images that correspond to your content area, then make a hyperlink on your image to go off to another website. Then we'll practice with that a little bit. Again, I'll put the link to this practice doc in the chat here. And I'll go ahead and let people get in there. And go ahead and jump in there and answer once below the blue column and once below the yellow column. If you're stuck in full screen in Zoom, by the way, just hit escape on the keyboard and that'll move it off so you can minimize it. You guys got another couple minutes. And we'll take one more minute. Still got plenty of space. So go ahead and just jot something down in each column. If you might, for Vicky, your question, you're probably still in the Zoom window, so minimize out of the Zoom window. Hit the escape key and minimize out of that, and then head over to the link that I put in the chat. Yeah, let's take about another 30 seconds. All right, so let's take a look at what you guys said. All right, so for our first one here, it's when we post the Hyperdoc in Classroom, do we need to give a copy to all students? Yes, if you want your students to each have their own version. If you're going to do one shared doc, then you would just put it in there and allow students to edit. But most cases, you'll probably have each student do their own copy. So then, yeah, you'd set it to make a copy. Then you put it in a picture here. Oh, it looks like we don't have a hyperlink on there. So again, to hyperlink, you click on your picture and do Control K on top of the picture and put in whatever link that you want. I'll just put in google.com. Of course, you can put in links to other places. So you might, make a hyperdoc, and inside of it, you'll have a picture that hyperlinks over to an article that you want students to read, or a video, or whatever other website you want. And that way you can just say in the directions, click on the picture to click on the picture to the right to go do X, Y, or Z. Next one here is, how practical is the use of Hyperdocs when teaching a multitude of high school subjects? You can absolutely do that. The Hyperdocs are inherently very flexible. So of course you can do it for any subject area, any grade level. So if you're teaching multiple preps, you can absolutely do that. You can make different Hyperdocs for different content areas, different topics, whatever it is. And if you're teaching the same group of students, different subjects, you can do that as well. Make one giant Hyperdoc that has a section for their reading activity for the day, then a section for their science activity for the day, and then a section for their math activity for the day. So you can do it either way, whether or not you have multiple preps of different groups of students or multiple preps of the same group of students. And we have this bunny picture here. Oh, that one doesn't have a hyperlink on it either. Let's see, the first one did have a hyperlink put onto it. So it looks like she put in, I think that was Heather's there. She put in a link over to understood.org. Looks like a site all about SPED. Awesome. Let's see, then we have a picture of the Capitol building. And it looks like that links over to BrainPop for branches of government. Perfect. Let's see, someone else said, can you create hyperlinks with Gifs like you would a picture? You absolutely can. That's a good question. Here, I'm going to make a new just make a new row here. And so if you want to put in a GIF, probably the easiest way to do it, there's several different ways to do it, but a nice easy way to do it is I like the extension called Giphy. So I have a Chrome extension. It's called Giphy. Let me find it in here. I have so many in here. Let's see. Where'd you go? There you are. Giphy for Chrome, Giphy. And when you click on it, it just opens up this little thing here. And if we just drop in a picture, you can just drag it on over. And there we go. We have a GIF sitting right here in our Google Doc. Doesn't matter if you're using Google Docs or if you're using slides or whatever, you can still, the process will be exactly the same. All right. And just like for hyperlinking a still picture, we can do the same thing, Control K, put in a picture or put in a hyperlink rather. So if, this one goes to weather.com, for example. There we go. There's this link. And when somebody clicks on this link, it can shoot them over to weather.com, whatever website you want. All right, then somebody put in a picture of a globe here. So it has a little geography definition. Perfect. Somebody put in a picture of a little flower there. And they went into, links over to a Pinterest board, it looks like. And last one here, a little picture of a counselor thing that goes over to their school guidance webpage. Perfect. All right, so just those couple of skills that we did right here, just filling in boxes and putting in pictures and hyperlinks, that gets you like halfway there for putting together a Hyperdoc. So if we go back here just for a second, and if we go back to talking about, back a little bit here, back to the major components of a good Hyperdoc, putting in multimedia, putting in those pictures or videos, that's pretty much what we covered. We'll talk about videos in just a little bit and audio, but hyperlinking, once you get that, that's probably the biggest thing of a Hyperdoc, of course. And that just comes down to really just organizing your Hyperdoc to however you want it to be, actually organized. All right. Next thing to talk about here is using Google Classroom to assign Hyperdocs. So let's say for example, we'll swing back around to how to make a complete Hyperdoc from scratch in just a little bit. Let's just say, for example, though, that we found a Hyperdoc out there somewhere. It's all ready to go, or maybe we made like a little change or whatever. And it's ready to go out and be sent out to the students. All we have to do is put the hyperlink right into our Google Drive again, or put the Hyperdoc right into our Google Drive. Again, if you make it from Google Docs or from Google Slides, that's where it'll be saved anyway. You might want to put it into like a folder of your choice to keep it organized. But then we can create an assignment right in Google Classroom. So let me jump into there real quick. And just to make this point real quick, if you are assigning out a Hyperdoc for each individual student to do, so let me go ahead and make an assignment. I'll just call this government Hyperdoc. I'll just use that same file that we did earlier. Go into add, and because it's in our Google Drive, we'll attach it from Drive. And we'll do a search. And I'll just look for government. Hyperdoc. Let's find this thing real quick. Let's see, where are you? There it is. And we drop that in there. Now, of course, if we want each student to do their own activity, we'll set it to make a copy for each student. Now, if we want to do like a shared Google Doc like we were doing over here, we would set it to students can edit file. Now, a couple things to note about this. Like we saw over here, we can do just one big shared Google Doc and everybody will be able to edit it, of course, whenever you want. Now, a couple of things that you can do to kind of control stuff a little bit better. One thing that you can also do is when you are making the Hyperdoc itself, instead of kind of giving students free reign over which box they're supposed to type into or put a picture into or whatever they're doing, you can label boxes with students' names. So I'm just going to make a table real quick, just going to insert table. Maybe I'll make a little, oops. Make a couple more there. And so what you can do is you can leave students' names maybe like on each row. And then that way you can have a clear spot for where students are supposed to be putting their answers. Right? And that way students know what row they're supposed to be typing into. You can still have those same questions, but then you can have a nice clear spot for where students are supposed to put their answers when they're collaborating on the same document. Of course, I can make this prettier. We'll talk about how to make these things look nicer once we start talking about making one from scratch in just a little bit. But the point is, if you want to do either a shared Hyperdoc where everybody's kind of collaborating in the same one, if you want to have a clear idea of what students are saying what, just make these things ahead of time, and you can give them a clear spot for where those individual students are supposed to be answering. So just give them each a row or a column and just label it that way. A lot of the stuff we're doing in Google Docs, it's all just really like table based, where we just go to insert and make a table of whatever size that we want. And then from there, we can label it and color it and do all that stuff from there. Now, if you're doing this over in Google Slides, what you would want to do is make an individual slide for each student. Then you just put their name at the top so it's stuck there. And of course, students would just go to their own slide where they fill in whatever questions that they have. They could still go in and look at the other kids' slides if they want, but they will be able to they're only allowed to edit their own. Okay. You can also change your sharing settings as well. So if you come up to the share button, if you want to like stop kids from coming in here and making these changes, if you go into the share icon up here, you can change this stuff as well. So you can see all the editors and stuff that I have here. I can also change, if in the case I did a shareable link, I can change this back over to viewer. And done. And then even if somebody comes back and goes into this doc again, let me just hop in real quick, they're only going to be able to look at the document. So just like that, you can just go into that share button and change the share settings from editor to viewer, and that way you can only edit the document without being able to actually change stuff. So if you want to give them only a couple of minutes to fill out their parts of the Hyperdoc, then you can kind of change those permissions whenever you like. Okay. All right. Last thing to mention real quick, just on the Google Classroom front. One thing to note is if you forget to set it to make a copy for each student, and maybe you accidentally left it on students can edit file, then you assign it out. If you remember, oh yeah, oops, that was supposed to be make a copy for each student, and you try to go back in and edit this assignment again, you'll lose that ability to make a copy for each student. So unfortunately, you have to basically just delete this assignment from Classroom, and you have to come in and make it over again. Okay, so super important to, if you are planning on making it set to make a copy for each student, you have to do that the first time. Okay. Quick little side note as well. Mallory says she learned that one the hard way. Yeah, I bet. Yep. Another little side note here. If you are not using Google Classroom and you want each student to automatically get a copy of your Hyperdoc, what you can do is create a shareable link from the Hyperdoc like you normally do. And then in that web address for that shareable link, you'd find the word edit that's in the link, erase that, and then in its place, type the word copy like so. Okay, that's only if you're not using Google Classroom, because this is basically just what Google Classroom does for you. But this is your kind of workaround. If your school doesn't use, or if you don't use Google Classroom, that does that automatically for you. That's your little bit of a workaround to be able to do that. Okay. So however we do it, the purpose behind using Hyperdocs is to make learning more engaging, interactive, and inspiring. So before we go too much further here, let's talk about making one from scratch. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and make a brand new Google Doc here. I'll use my little keyboard shortcut here, docs.new into the address bar to make me a brand new Google Doc. Nice little shortcut. Has nothing to do with Hyperdocs, but it's always a good little shortcut to use. And we'll quickly go over just how to make one from scratch. Like I said, if you are building them in Google Docs, everything is pretty much going to be table-based. Okay, that's the easiest way to keep stuff organized. You don't have to necessarily use tables if you don't want to, but it's kind of the best way to keep stuff nice and clean and organized. All right, so let's go ahead and make a table. So we'll go under the Insert tab and make a table again. And so maybe my idea is I'll kind of just recreate that government hyperdoc that we started with. So it was like three squares wide, and then let's just do, I don't know, like 8 squares in height. And then what we can do is we can mess with the formatting if we want. I kind of recommend doing that at the end. Easiest thing to do is just kind of give yourself space like per row. So I like to kind of give myself a little bit of space by expanding out the size of the row a little bit as needed. And if you remember back over to that government hyperdoc, the very first row was actually just one big square. It was one big cell. And the way to make those is just by merging cells. So if we just highlight the cells that we want to merge or just kind of smush into one, we'll click and drag and highlight those cells. Then we're going to go find the merge button. Because of my layout here, I think I have to go under this little drop down here. Oh, I'm just kidding. Just kidding. I'm lying. I have to highlight it and then right click. That's what I have to do. Highlight it and right click. And then we have to go and find merge cells. That's what we're looking for. There we go. So now we have like one big cell there. So maybe I'll call this like warm up. And then I can give my different instructions. And of course, I can split these up however I want. I'm just kind of emulating that government one that we started with. But of course, I can have my maybe directions in one cell. In the next cell over, we'll have maybe our materials. And then the last one, we'll have our question. Okay. And then basically from there, we can rinse and repeat. So we'll have our warm-up activity all ready. We'll have our directions, materials, and questions. And then we go into our next one. And we'll go into merge cells. Maybe we'll have this one be called notes. And maybe we'll have some directions. And maybe we'll have some materials. And in here you'd find maybe a link to your slideshow, video, or etc. And then in your question, you can have some sort of wrap-up question or formative question in there. These could be formative or summative questions. I'll resize these rows to try to make them as visually appealing as we can. And then maybe at the end here, I'll merge this last one together. Maybe we'll call this the group activity. And again, we have our directions. We'll have our materials. And maybe in this case, we have like a link to a group Google Doc, or maybe a quizzes, I spelled that wrong, quizzes activity, etc. And then any other final questions, or maybe this could also be upcoming tomorrow, or it could also be homework, whatever it is. All right. Any extra rows, maybe I'll just delete these ones. I really don't need them. So I'll highlight those, right click on them, and I'll delete those 2 rows. Okay, everything that you do when you're putting a table together, a lot of it is just highlighting and right-clicking. All right, now let's go ahead and make this thing a little bit prettier to look at here. So first of all, it's kind of small, so I'll kind of make it a little bit bigger here. And so I'm going to highlight everything. Let me go ahead and stretch this down a little bit here. And what I'm going to do is after I kind of stretch this out to kind of a little bit bigger, what I can do is right-click on top of anything that's been highlighted. And what we can find is these distribute rows or distribute columns buttons. Basically what these do is it makes all the cells the same size according to the row or the column. In this case, it's the rows that are different sizes. So I'm going to do distribute rows. And hey, there we go. So now these are a little bit of a kind of a more even size. And just like that, maybe I want to change up the colors. So I'll click into this first box. I'm going to go find my little fill bucket. And I'll go and change the color here. So maybe I'll do like a light purple for the warm-up one, light blue for the notes, and maybe do a light green for the group activity. Now we can give it a fun font again. So if I highlight everything, I can use a more fun font. So maybe I'll do, let's do, Boogaloo's a good one. Let's do that one. Make it a little bit bigger. Maybe up on the warm-up ones, maybe I'll center those. Maybe make that row a little bit smaller so it's a little bit easier to see. And centered, and shrink it down a little bit. And hey, there we go. And quickly like that, we can have a pretty nice looking little activity. And of course, this one's just kind of a placeholder, of course, but you'll fill in this stuff with your actual content, your actual directions or slideshows or videos or your actual questions. Now, if you want to have your students answer directly on the Hyperdoc, it's good to give them a nice clear spot for where they're supposed to put an answer. So like in this case here, I gave them this one square where I'm going to ask them a question. So what I can also do is maybe give them another clear spot for where they're supposed to put their answer. So what I can do is I can actually just put in a little 1-by-1 table within a cell. And what I can do is just leave that box there, maybe even change the color so kids know that they're supposed to put their answer. Maybe like make it yellow. Maybe put something in the directions. Maybe I'll say, answer in the yellow boxes. Okay. And just like that, we can have a little simple place where students know that they're supposed to put their answers. And again, the way to do that is, even though I'm already inside of a table, again, I can just go into insert, make a little 1-by-1 table, drop that in there, maybe change the color. So again, so it's nice and easy to see, but just like that, you can have a little nice clear spot for where kids are supposed to put their answers. And the cool thing about that too, is even if they type, a whole bunch of stuff, the box will get bigger and fit to however much stuff that they type. All right. And just like that, we have a, I'll call this example Hyperdoc. And just like that, we have this activity all made and pretty much ready to go. Then we just do the same thing that we did before, throw it in Google Classroom, and up to you for whether or not it's going to be one shared Google Doc or not. And of course, you can combine the same thing that we talked about earlier. So if you want to have all these same instructions and everything and have maybe just one shared table at the bottom that has all the students' names for all those, like I was showing earlier, where each student has their name and a spot for where they're supposed to answer. So you can have all that stuff built into one Hyperdoc. So again, whether or not it's going to be one big shared Hyperdoc or one that's independently done by each student, it's up to you to set that up. Now, real quick, I just wanted to mention, if you want to build a Hyperdoc in Google Slides, let me jump into a new Google slide real quick. And like I mentioned earlier, if you want to put in videos, it's a lot easier if you put in videos into Google Slides, because you can have the video play right inside the slideshow, which is a lot easier. And this also works nicely for audio clips as well. All right. So a couple things to note here. Like I said earlier, if you are doing the shared Hyperdoc in a slideshow, basically what you can do is make a different slide for each of your different students. So, here's Andy's slide, here's, Becky's slide, and here's, Charlie's slide. Okay. And then of course, each student would go and do their own slide. Okay. And then basically on the first slide, you have all your instructions, what students are supposed to be doing, all that stuff. Or you can make a template and then just copy it a bunch of times for each student, and each student would fill out that activity and still be able to look at each other's assignments, or how they responded rather. Okay. Now, of course, if you want to put in a video, we just go into insert in video, and you can pull in a video that's either in your Google Drive or from YouTube. Now, one thing to note real quick, if you pull in a video from your Google Drive, let me just pull in a video real quick here. If you pull in a video that you have sitting in your Google Drive, students may not necessarily be able to watch it if you share this slideshow over to them. Now, the reason is, if you share over a Google slide that has a video in it, the video will only be visible to the person that owns the video. That is, unless you turn on link sharing for that video. Okay, so that's kind of confusing. So let me show you what I mean. I'll call this slide Hyperdoc. And let's just say, for example, we're taking this this little Google slideshow here. Oops. And what we're going to do is I'm just going to post this real quick into our Google Classroom. Let me go ahead and jump in here real quick. Make sure I have students in this class. Yes, I do. Okay. Go ahead and make an assignment real quick. And let me go ahead and flip this thing on. Now, let me check and see if this video has link sharing on. So I'm going to go and find this video real quick. And I think I made that one with Screencastify. So let me go find this video real quick here. Okay. Let me check what my sharing settings are. Okay, so I already have link sharing turned on for this video. Let me actually just turn this off real quick, because I just want to make this point real quick here for you. So now that I have that video set, I just want to show this to you guys real quick. Oh, I did my own thing. I forgot to set it to make a copy. Let me come in here, select Hyperdoc, make a copy. So the point of all this here is, if you are putting in a video that's in your Google Drive into a Google slideshow, and then you're giving it to students through Classroom, and you're setting it to make a copy for each student, they may not be able to watch the video that you put in the slideshow unless you turn on link sharing for that video beforehand. So let me go over to the student's perspective real quick. I know this is confusing, my apologies, but let me just show you what I mean here. Okay, so here's the copy of this slideshow. there's the embedded video, and this is what they'll get. Okay, so if you do not turn on link sharing for that video, they're not going to be able to watch the video. They'll have to request access. Okay, now this only happens if you are setting the slideshow to make a copy for each student. Okay, now the way to fix this though is by turning on link sharing for that video. So you go into the sharing settings and you can set it to anyone with a link or in your domain if you want, and allow them to view and say done. Okay, let me jump back over here. Let me give this a refresh. As this loads for me, we should be able to watch this little video here. There it is. Okay, so if you are doing a video clip, or this will also apply for audio clips as well. If you are putting in a video clip or audio clip into a Google slide, and you are setting it through Google Classroom to make a copy for each student, they may not be able to watch the video unless you set the video clip or the audio clip to have link sharing turned on. Okay, so I know that's confusing. My apologies. If you have any questions about that, just let me know. Okay. All right. And then basically just like that, those are the major elements of a, let me jump back here real quick. Those are the major elements of a Hyperdoc. So you can have multimedia, pictures or videos or audio. Again, those little caveats about video and audio if you're sending it to make a copy for each student. Hyperlinks to other websites or things that you want students to see. Places for students to respond. Like we saw, give them a nice clear box for where they're supposed to answer. Just doing a little one-by-one table is a really easy way to do that. Again, having some clear organization, whether it's tables that you're making or separate slides in the slideshows, and then just comes down to you for making those different types of activities. Okay. All right, in the interest of time here, we'll pretty much come down to the end here. Here is a bunch of resources for you guys to come find, a ton of pre-made, ready-to-go Hyperdocs out there. So on slide number 18, there's a bunch of different links here for you. There's a bunch of stuff, so you really don't have to make stuff from scratch. I would always check out these couple of websites here. You can find a bunch of good stuff on here. There's a bunch of resources that are available on this website. This is hyperdocs.co, and you can find samples of Hyperdocs that are out there. There's a bunch of stuff on here. You can basically just filter through by subject area or whatever, go into, science, and it takes you over to all these like different folders. This one's just a Google Drive folder, just full of different pre-made, ready-to-go Hyperdocs made by other teachers. Anyone that you like, you can open it up. So if we want to do, this Earth Day one, for example, we can open this one up, take a look at it. Right now it's view only because another teacher made this. But what the point of it is, we can look at it and we can say, okay, once this loads for me here, we can say, okay, this is looking pretty good. Looks like it's a pretty good activity. Again, I did not make this. This is just another activity that another teacher has made. And if this looks pretty good to me, I can make a copy of this for myself, just going up to the file button up in the top and make a copy. And I'll put this over in my, I'll just put this in my drive. Put it in my drive and say, okay. And there we go. It's going to make a copy of this Earth Day science activity. And again, there's a ton of stuff on that website that's available for you guys. It's all free stuff. So there's a bunch of goodies in there. So depending on whatever you're teaching, you can just kind of explore through all that good stuff and find all the free goodies that are out there. All right. Same thing with this other website here, also on slide number 18, the second bullet point down. This Live Binders website, this also has a bunch of free pre-made, ready-to-go Hyperdocs. You can sort down by grade or whatever you want. So I jump into that. There's a bunch of different categories and everything, and You can go and look for whatever you want. All right. You'll find a little embedded version here. It'll give you the link. You'll see the preview. Then you can click on this little link or go into File and make a copy for yourself. All right. So there's a ton of pre-made stuff in there. So my recommendation, always go look for the free pre-made stuff. Might as well save yourself some time and go look at all the goodies. You can also search on Teachers, Give Teachers. That's another website. You can search on Teachers, Pay Teachers as well. You can also search for the Hyperdocs or Hyperdoc hashtags on Twitter particularly. You can just add that into a tweet saying, hey, does anybody have a hashtag Hyperdoc for, you know, algebra 2 this thing or whatever whatever you're working on. Okay. They also have a really good Facebook group as well. All right. So you can find tons and tons of great resources out there. All right. There's our to-do list that we started with. So we looked at the what and the why of Hyperdocs. We looked at Google Doc versions of Hyperdocs as well as the Google Slide versions of Hyperdocs. Then we looked at the major components of what makes up a good Hyperdoc. We looked briefly at how Hyperdocs works with Google Classroom. Now pretty much we're down to our wrap-up time here. If you are interested in earning graduate credit, here's the instructions for that. So if you're needing some grad credit, the instructions on slide number 20 are there for you. If you have any questions about that, just let me know. Here's our upcoming trainings coming up for the next couple of weeks. You can check out all this stuff there. More of it's available at training.neonet.org. But with that said, that's pretty much going to bring us down to the end. If you have any more questions, again, feel free to type in the chat or unmute yourself if you're live with us. If you think of something down the line, feel free to shoot me an email, dneeson@neonet.org. If you're here live with us, again, please go ahead and click the sign in here button. I'll put the link in the chat again for us if you're here live with us. There's also a quick survey on the very last slide as well. But with that said, that'll pretty much bring us down to the end. If you have any more questions, let me know. Other than that, don't forget to wash your hands, wear a mask, stay safe. I'll see you guys next time. Thanks, everybody.